When I was a little child, I was very sweet, adorable, sensitive, and kind person. And my mother had more time to spend with me. I was born and raised in Romania as a minority, which defined a lot of my path because I was bullied a lot. In the first 7 years, my mother had more time, patience, and attention for me. When I was 7, the system changed. Like, we went from communism to democracy. When I was little, we had no land. But I come home from school when I'm 7, and all of a sudden, I see my father brought home a cow. We had no barn. We had barely anything for that cow, but we made space for her. And that's where it all started, because we started to have more and more land. We started to have more cows. And that's when hard work started. And I had to work hard. So basically, I lost my childhood. But even worse, my parents got into a standby mode. They became very abusive, very aggressive, very violent. So I was abused mentally, emotionally, physically. And instead of being a child, I had to work hard, so I had to become an adult. I had to do everything perfectly for the first time, and nothing was good enough that I did. So what I heard all the time was that I'm a loser, I'm stupid, nobody's gonna love me, nobody's gonna care for me, and I'm not gonna get anywhere in my life. So I will always need them, and they are good and I'm bad. And me, as a loving, caring, and very sensitive child, this hurt me a lot, because at the same time, I was pushing work so hard and I tried to deliver everything my parents wanted. At the same time, it felt so painful that I cannot just be playful and careless like another child. They also isolated me from friends, and I couldn't play. I couldn't go to events because I had to work. I had to work hard, even on Sunday, wake up at 7 a.m. and deal with the cows or milk cows. So it felt like it's all so unfair, and I don't get that gratification, and I don't get appreciation and that proper love, because my mother, instead of being a housewife and cooking and keeping the home clean, she was going to the market selling groceries and then working hard on the land. My father was working hard on the land, so I had to do the same. And besides school, that's what I had to do. Now, I tried to slip out of this a little bit, and I always pretended that I had a lot to study. And so sometimes I fell asleep with my book, pretending I'm studying, and sometimes I was caught, but it was all fine. I was considering committing suicide at the age of 8. The reason this crossed my mind, and I was even looking for rat poison in the house, was that my parents made me believe that I'm useless and I ruined their lives. And if they didn't have me, their life was easier. So that's all they made me believe. So I thought, if I take my own life, it will be all easier for them. But I couldn't find a poison, and probably the motivation was not strong enough. So I survived. I think I tried to kill myself with diseases as well. I was very skinny. I had anemia. So my mother was chasing doctors and naturopaths all the time. Besides that, I had asthma, so my childhood was full of bronchitis and pneumonia, like in a row. And sometimes I was missing school for a very long time. Sometimes there were long periods when I couldn't attend school because I was with fever, coughing, and trying to find air to breathe. It was very tough. I would say that the world of my parents was very different from the world of the people of society. I always felt like an outcast wherever I went, and I had to cope with that, and sometimes I gained a lot of weight. For example, at university, when I came to Hungary to study, I gained 20 kilos in 3 months, which is about 45 pounds. So yeah, many times I felt like I have no one to trust. I cannot count on anyone. I'm an outcast. I'm not felt. I'm not understood, and nobody cares about me truly. And whenever I had deep issues and problems, I couldn't count on anyone. And then growing up, not long ago, I found out that yes, my mother was schizophrenic, bipolar, narcissistic with borderline syndrome because she had tremendous amount of trauma. And in the end, she went insane, but she was also a witch, so she could curse, and that would work. And this was scary. She was a very powerful woman, so I had no boundaries with her. I was very weak and exposed, and she would drain me. Sometimes I was good and I was her everything, and sometimes she hated me and I was the worst person in the world. And there was no consistency, so I couldn't control that, doing something good and then I'm loved. No, sometimes out of the blue I just found myself in hell. And this is why I became a giver, because there was no way for me I would defeat my parents or I could control my parents, but giving energy, but getting into this helpless victim mode. And as I grew up, I took that into my adulthood, and that created a lot of issues in my life. And then growing up, I attracted the same abusive people who had strong mental powers, who would cast spell on me even unconsciously. So I had to learn to cope with all that if I wanted to save myself. I had to decompose my mindset, what I believe about myself, about the world, about people, about connections. I had to redefine myself, trying to find out the truth, because I was brainwashed at home, but society also has distorted values. So yeah, I was a seemingly strong person, but I was a masculine woman. My first boyfriend at 22, I emasculated. I was better at everything, and I didn't understand what I did. So I just basically ruined my relationship. But it was him cheating on me and stepping out of the relationship this way, and I was the victim because I had no clue. I was full of anger. I was full of anxiety, full of wounds, full of triggers, full of trauma. And I had a very distorted self-concept, a very distorted mindset. I had no proper self-connection because I lost myself in childhood in order to survive and please my parents, because they were like dictators. So yeah, it was not easy, but there's nothing special until you don't take a closer look to it and understand it from close. And it took a lot of strength to face it, to heal it, to dig it out. But that made me who I became today, and now I can teach and I can help others with the same issues. Since that's what makes me happy, my life is happy. So if I do a bit of self-analysis growing up, I always felt like an outcast. I was behaving like a loser many of the times, and I felt like, although I didn't want to, and I was a very powerful person, I was not feminine, so I was a very masculine woman. I had a lot of oppressions, a wound, trauma, pain, anger, resentment, and rage. And it took me some time to understand that. But needless to say, when you have too many triggers and trauma, you become bipolar. When you have a narcissistic mother, you get those narcissistic tendencies in some situations. When you have those type of parents, you become a victim. So it's your strategy to be a victim, which again creates the loser. I had this tremendous drive to prove that I'm good enough, that I'm lovable. And that's basically what got me so far. And I'm glad for all the things that I have right now, because I speak 6 languages. I traveled the world. I have 2 degrees. I have various professions. I have my own business, and I'm here to record this video. And I'm trying to become the best version of myself. I want to see a better world. And I'm on the way to getting to my full potential because I take responsibility and I want to do my part in the world. And also I looked like I'm confident, but I had no confidence in so many ways. So whenever I was in a submissive rapport with someone, I got anxious. I just couldn't handle myself mentally and emotionally. So needless to say that I wasn't able to develop healthy, stable relationships of any kind. And my relationships were either messed up or just superficial. I had tons of triggers and judgments that sabotaged my connection with people, tons of wounds that made me always become a victim. I was defensive, judgmental, and would get disappointed of people tons of times. So I had no trust because I came from an environment where I couldn't build trust and proper bond, even with my mother. I had no proper knowledge of people, the personalities, and myself, and I couldn't handle these situations. I couldn't handle people. I couldn't assess people. Later on, I understood that how my energy, how my behavior, how my way of thinking about them defined them in their reaction and way of connection with me. So 15 years ago, I started working on myself because my life was out of hand. It collapsed, and this was the only way out. And I feel very grateful and fortunate that this opportunity found me because it opened the world for me. I share more about this part in the feeling lost video. So I spent endless amount of money on trainings and teachings and masters and healers and teachers. And I went worldwide and I was trying to find the best method, the best technique. But in the end, after 8 years, I had to go my way with my students, with my followers, with my trainings, and explore the invisible, the soul, the heart, and the mind, and our purpose of life. So I had to decompose my belief system and check each and every bit of it. If it's true, if it's false. I started crafting myself with each and every role in my life that I had to fulfill as a business owner, as a leader, as a mother, as a partner, as a woman, as a human, as a spiritual healer and teacher and coach. And then I had to process the judgments. I had to process loads of trauma. I was processing triggers and I was building my confidence. And I developed my own method and my own techniques to do that because the things that I found out in the world were either not so effective or were too slow and were not so practical for me. So I went my own way and I could speed up this healing and growth process, which I'm very grateful for. And this led me to this life that I had right now that is completely on my terms and where I feel free, and I became the person and the woman I can be very proud of. And this is basically the feedback that I get from the world outside. And I have to say, this is a really, really beautiful way if you don't judge the negatives in your life, if you learn to not judge it, and if you take it as lessons to learn, if you take the path as a way to grow, and if you take life as a way of discovering yourself, of understanding yourself, your life, other people, connections, goals, path, love. So it's truly beautiful. But in order to take this journey, no matter how long and no matter how far, because you grow and learn for life, but at least it's a progress and you always become a better and better version of yourself. And this is truly beautiful. And yes, right now I'm a very easy person to connect with. I have around me mutually uplifting connections. I'm able to set proper boundaries and I can say no to the right people so those kind of people wouldn't take advantage of me. I basically cannot be hurt because I know that people can be miserable and evil because of their own wounds. So I just respect them as they are, and I'm strong enough to have no expectations from them so they cannot hurt or disappoint me. I lost my fear of people, so I'm very glad to initiate connections, conversations, even teach people. I am very deeply connected with myself, with my soul, with my own gut feeling. And whenever it might be shaky, I always get into myself, try to understand what's going on. What is it that makes me feel anxious? And I have this deep and true self-love and a lot of unconditional love for people. When you decide to do the work, when you decide to work on yourself, in the end, you get into a free space as you set yourself free step by step. And it's a very different quality of life, a very different mind, a very different heart and soul, a way stronger self. You start making different decisions. And so you create a completely different, upgraded life with a better and better version of yourself. So I would say that social anxiety disconnects you from all these opportunities, from life, from enjoying, understanding, and mastering life as an art. It is a way of being lost, so I really advise you to watch the feeling lost video. That would complement a lot this video, and I don't want to repeat myself. In the feeling lost video, you get a different part of my life story. You also understand deeper mindset, how you can work on yourself, how you can start this journey, and how you can understand who you truly are. For now, since I'm very practical and down to earth, I would like to show you an exercise and explain a little bit around it. Many of you might have heard of affirmations.